In the dark of night, a herd of pigs, their eyes wild and their bodies trembling, stampeded off a cliff and plunged into the sea, disappearing into the churning waters. This haunting image, captured in the Gospels, is just one of the many medieval stories that shaped the way European Christians viewed pigs. These creatures, often seen as simple farm animals, carried a complex and often dark significance in the minds of those who lived centuries ago. The story of the Gadarene Swine, as it is known, is told in the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke. It describes how Jesus, while visiting a remote area, encountered a man possessed by a legion of demons. Jesus, with his divine power, cast the demons out of the man and into a nearby herd of pigs. The pigs, now filled with the evil spirits, rushed to their doom, leaping off a cliff and drowning in the sea. This dramatic event left a lasting impression on medieval theologians, who saw it as a powerful symbol of the battle between good and evil. St. Augustine, a prominent early Christian theologian, interpreted this event as a demonstration of Christ's authority over both human and animal realms. He argued that Christ did not equate humans with animals, as he allowed the pigs to be sacrificed to rid the man of his demonic possession. This interpretation reinforced the belief that animals, while part of God's creation, were secondary to human beings in the divine order. However, the pig's role in this story was not just that of innocent bystanders. In the 13th century, the philosopher Albertus Magnus provided a more detailed and critical interpretation. He noted that pigs were considered unclean for several reasons. Firstly, their physical characteristics, such as having a divided hoof but not chewing cud, made them violate the laws set forth in the book of Leviticus. Secondly, pigs were seen as filthy creatures, often rolling in mud and eating from unclean sources. This association with filth and uncleanliness reinforced the idea that pigs were inherently low and unworthy. The image of the Gadarene swine was not only a powerful religious symbol, but also a common subject in medieval art. Artists like those who created the Magdeburg ivories in the mid-900s depicted the scene with great detail, showing the possessed man and the pigs in their final moments. These images were often used to teach moral lessons, emphasizing the need for spiritual purity and the dangers of demonic influence. Another significant biblical story involving pigs is the parable of the prodigal son, found in the Gospel of Luke. In this tale, a young man leaves his father's house, squanders his inheritance, and ends up in a lowly position as a swineherd. This job was considered degrading, especially for a Jew, as pigs were unclean animals. The son, reduced to feeding pigs and even considering eating their food, hit rock bottom. It was at this point of extreme despair that he decided to return to his father, seeking forgiveness and redemption. This parable was a favorite in medieval art, particularly in the stained glass windows of Gothic cathedrals, where the son is often shown tending to pigs, a stark visual of his fall from grace. Despite the generally negative connotations, pigs were not always seen as purely evil. In the Middle Ages, they were also associated with saints, particularly Saint Anthony. Saint Anthony, an Egyptian hermit, is often depicted with a pig, a symbol that became a fixed part of his iconography by the early 14th century. The association with Saint Anthony likely arose from the fact that the Hospitaller orders of Saint Anthony kept pigs in urban centers to provide meat and lard for treating patients suffering from ergotism, a painful disease also known as Saint Anthony's fire. The Order of Saint Anthony received a special privilege from Pope Innocent IV in 1256, allowing them to keep free-ranging pigs in cities. These pigs wore bells to identify them as belonging to the order, and they were cared for by the common people, who fed them with scraps. When the pigs were eventually slaughtered, the meat was distributed to the poor. This practice not only provided food for those in need, but also reinforced the idea that even the lowly pig could serve a higher purpose. Saint Anthony's pigs became a symbol of charity and community, and the saint himself became the patron of swineherds. This positive association with pigs was not unique to Saint Anthony. Other saints, such as Saint Bridget of Ireland, were also connected to pigs through their miracles. According to a biography written by Cogitasus, Saint Bridget, as a young girl, was a swineherd. She performed miracles involving pigs, such as taming a wild boar and having wolves act as swineherds, protecting her herd. These stories showed that pigs, while not inherently evil, could be guided by divine intervention and used for good. However, the relationship between saints and pigs was not always positive. Saint Francis of Assisi, known for his love of nature, cursed a sow that had killed a newborn lamb. He saw the lamb as a symbol of innocence, and the sow as a murderer. The cursed sow fell ill and died, her body discarded in the monastic moat. This story reinforced the idea that pigs could be symbols of evil, and that their actions could have serious consequences. The medieval mind saw pigs as both a resource and a source of moral lessons. They were valued for their meat and their role in treating illness, but they were also used to teach about the dangers of sin and the importance of spiritual purity. This complex relationship with pigs reflected the broader medieval world, where even the most humble creatures could carry deep symbolic and moral significance. In the legends and folklore of medieval Europe, pigs often appeared as agents of the devil or as omens of bad luck. For example, in the Middle Irish saga, The Battle of Mag Muckryme, magic pigs emerge from a cave, causing 7 years of destruction. In the Icelandic saga, Vilmundar Saga Vigitin, a herd of pigs was called forth by witchcraft to fight against the hero. These stories reinforced the idea that pigs were not just simple farm animals, but were also connected to the supernatural and the demonic. In contrast, wild boar were often seen as noble and powerful creatures. In medieval heraldry, the boar was a symbol of strength and valor. Germanic tribes wore armor emblazoned with boar emblems, and the boar was a sacred animal in Nordic mythology, associated with the gods Freyr and Freyja. The boar's reputation as a fierce and worthy opponent was celebrated in literature and art, from the tales of King Arthur to the House of York's white boar emblem. One of the most interesting examples of a virtuous wild pig is the legend of the Salzsau in Lüneburg, Germany. According to the story, a white wild sow led 2 men to a salt spring, which became the foundation of Lüneburg's prosperity. The sow, credited with this discovery, was venerated, and her bones were kept in a reliquary in the town hall. This story showed that even wild pigs could be agents of good, bringing wealth and prosperity to a community. The medieval world was a place where the mundane and the mystical often intertwined. Pigs, with their complex and contradictory roles, were a perfect example of this. They were both a resource for survival and a symbol of moral lessons, a source of food and a source of fear. The stories and images of pigs in medieval Europe reveal a society that saw the world in terms of deep spiritual and moral significance, where even the humblest creatures played a part in the grand narrative of human existence. In medieval times, the wild boar and the domestic pig held complex and often negative symbolism, reflecting a range of moral and religious beliefs. The wild boar, for instance, could represent a noble and fierce enemy, as seen in the legend of King Arthur, who was known as the Boar of Cornwall. However, in other stories, the boar was a symbol of wickedness. The King Twr Chtr, for example, was transformed into a black boar as punishment for his sins and was driven into the sea. Similarly, in Icelandic sagas, evil characters used shape-shifting into boars to gain strength or evade capture. One of the most detailed allegorical descriptions of the boar comes from the Middle French hunting treatise, Les livres du roi modus et de la roine ratio. Here the boar is depicted as a dangerous and symbolic creature, often associated with Satan. The text lists 10 characteristics of the boar, each with a moral lesson. The boar is described as black and bristling, like those who lack spiritual light, wrathful, like those who lack charity and humility, and too proud to flee, like sinners who embrace evil. The boar's tusks are compared to the weapons of sinners, and its habit of wallowing in mud is likened to bathing in the filth of the Antichrist. The boar's end, deep under the earth, being eaten by worms, is seen as a metaphor for the fate of all mortals. The boar is even portrayed as a false counselor, speaking on behalf of the Antichrist and encouraging others to sin. Early Christian thinkers, such as Clement of Alexandria, used the pig as a symbol of sin, particularly sexual sin. Clement described the pig as representing unclean desires, always seeking pleasure in filth, and fattening for destruction. This association with sexual excess was reinforced by medieval city ordinances, such as one from York in 1301, which equated the transgressions of pigs with those of prostitutes. The ordinance stated that no one should keep pigs that wandered the streets, and similarly, no prostitute should stay in the city. The connection between pigs and prostitutes was so strong that anyone who captured a wandering pig could kill it, and the city bailiff would imprison prostitutes. The pig's association with sexual lust was further emphasized in medieval art. In Guillaume de Goualville's Pèlerinage de Vie Humaine, an illustration shows Venus, the goddess of love and lust, riding a pig. This image underscores the pig's connection to sexual desire. In medieval French towns, the image of a spinning sew, a pig spinning yarn, was common on house signs. Spinning was typically a woman's task, and the spindle was often associated with sexual imagery. Thus, the spinning sew symbolized women's roles in sexuality and fertility, but also their potential to be seen as unclean and dangerous. Pigs were also associated with gluttony. Medieval fables and bestiaries often depicted pigs as voracious eaters, particularly of acorns. One fable tells of swine ravaging the grain saved by hardworking ants, symbolizing the vice of greed. In some texts, pigs were even said to eat their own young, a real concern for pig farmers. This image of a sow eating her piglets, while not often depicted in art, was a powerful symbol of excessive greed. The pig's gluttony and unclean nature were further emphasized in religious contexts. In the 7th century Irish penitential of Adamnan, pork was considered inedible if the pig had consumed human flesh or blood. The pig's association with filth was so strong that it was used in biblical proverbs, such as, "Do not give what is holy to the dogs, nor cast your pearls before swine." Medieval artists often depicted this proverb with pigs eating flowers instead of pearls, a result of a mistranslation, but still conveying the message that pigs do not appreciate things of value. Over time, the negative associations with pigs were extended to Jewish people. The Jewish faith considered pork unclean, as pigs do not meet the dietary requirements set out in Leviticus. This dietary restriction was often used by Christians to vilify Jews. The encyclopedist Rabanus Maurus, in his De Rerum Naturis, explicitly linked Jews to pigs, describing them as impure and unclean. This association was further reinforced in medieval art through the Judensau motif, which depicted a sow with Jews suckling at her teats. These images were meant to dehumanize Jews and label them as unclean and sinful. The Judensau appeared in various forms, from architectural sculptures to book illuminations. One early example is a column capital from the Brandenburg Cathedral, dated to around 1230, showing a sow with a human head wearing a Jewish hat, and 4 piglets and a human suckling from her. Another example from Xanten Cathedral shows a sow biting a Jewish man's hat, while a man stands in front of her. These images were not only allegorical depictions of vices, but also served as anti-Jewish propaganda. The association of Jews with pigs was further reinforced by apocryphal stories. One such story, recorded in a Muslim text, tells of Jews hiding a woman and children behind a wall and mocking Jesus when he guessed correctly. Jesus then cursed them to become pigs and swine. Another story from a 13th century poem describes the child Jesus finding Jewish children hidden in an oven and cursing them to become pigs. These stories were used to explain why Jews do not eat pork and to vilify them. In this way, the pig and the wild boar, through their various symbolic roles, reflected the complex and often dark aspects of medieval society's moral and religious beliefs. The medieval world had a complex and often contradictory relationship with pigs. These animals played significant roles in religious, legal, and social contexts, reflecting the values and beliefs of the time. In religious discussions, the pig was often used as a symbol to debate moral and spiritual issues. For instance, in the 8th century Syrian text, the disputation of Sergius the Stylite against a Jew, the debate centered on the pig's nature as impure. The Jew argued that the pig's habits, such as eating impure things, made it naturally unclean. Sergius, however, countered that many animals eat unpleasant things but are not considered taboo, suggesting that the prohibition on pigs was more about human laws than the inherent nature of the animal. This debate extended to the story of Noah's Ark, where Sergius argued that highly fertile animals like pigs were created to be consumed, while the Jewish position, echoed by the 9th century Islamic writer al-Jahiz, maintained that the pig's impurity was intrinsic, even suggesting that pigs were created from elephant dung on the ark to eat cat droppings. The association between Jews and pigs was not just a matter of religious dietary laws, but also a way to stigmatize and otherize Jewish communities. In medieval Christian texts and images, Jews were sometimes depicted as pigs or associated with pigs, blurring the lines between the two. This association had real-world implications, such as the requirement for Jewish participants to swear oaths on a sow's skin in legal proceedings in the German lands. Pigs also found themselves in the courtroom, often accused of serious crimes like murder. These trials, while unusual to modern sensibilities, were a way for medieval society to maintain order and seek justice. Pigs were treated as legal subjects, capable of making choices and thus responsible for their actions. For example, a pig that killed a child could be sentenced to hanging, and its owners might face fines for negligence. These trials were not just about punishing the animal, but also about reinforcing social norms and resolving community tensions. The medieval imagination of pigs was a mix of contradictions. Pigs were valuable resources, providing food and other necessities, but they were also seen as symbols of gluttony and lust. They could be both sacred and profane, depending on the context. For instance, pigs were protected by saints like Saint Bridget and the Hospitallers of Saint Anthony, but they were also used to stigmatize certain groups of people, like prostitutes and Jews. In the end, the pig in medieval European society was more than just an animal. It was a symbol that reflected the moral and social values of the time. The way people thought about and treated pigs provided a window into their own lives and the way they saw the world around them. Through the pig, we can see the complex and often conflicted nature of medieval society, where physical realities and mental constructs intertwined to create a rich tapestry of human experience.